On Arbitrary Righteousness and Truckers, February 14th, 2022. You can't say you tried to save a drowning child while standing on the side of a deep end with the intent to swim out to save them. No amount of intentions saves a drowning child. It takes a body that knows how to swim, a body to dive, a body to take hold of another, and a body with enough strength to pull both of them out of the deep end to safety. There is nothing arbitrary about our bodies and the things they do in real life. So, as we see the arbitrary dropping of mandates about our bodies and how we cover and move them, as we see the masks come off of our children in the deep ends of society, while they stay on shallow adults until March 1st, we have to ask ourselves if we've been drowning all along in a deep end of best intentions and dire consequences. What most of this boils down to is consistency and compliance. We were told that if we all consistently wore masks, the virus would be stopped. But when we asked about the consistency of the masks themselves, we were given a perverse sort of freedom that we liked because of we are a perverse kind of people. The deep end of the mask's use doesn't care if you prefer to wear a bandana or if you're going to double mask. It knows what works and what doesn't because it wasn't always as subject to public malpractice as our current lifeguards and current drowning victims are today. When multiple levels of swimmers are all thrown into the deep end, it becomes drastically clear who's making it to the edge of the pool and who's not. A seasoned and fit, red fit tested, silicone half-face respirator with fresh P100 particulate cartridges makes it to the edge of the pool from a powerful dive to the center, with no thought about the danger of the deep water or the fact that the lifeguard was too busy doing poolside politics at the time. He wears his Speedo because it reduces drag and is muscle-bound and sleek. More importantly, he does what he is visibly made to do. The silicone half-face respirator is not arbitrary in the least. Everything he does in the water is intentional. This is why when the lifeguard said you have to be able to swim to the center of the deep, he dove, because clearly he could swim. But as he turns around, towel in hand to see who else is in the pool, he's faced with an awful scene. A non-valved N95 is flailing around in an attempt to breaststroke to the edge. He's making progress, but not making things enjoyable because he's splashing around too much. He's in a trendy, oversized board shorts that restrict his movement and make it hard to do the swimming that he thought he could do. He's not drowning, but he's also not swimming, if you want to call what the half-face respirator was doing, swimming. A blue surgical mask is screaming at the top of her lungs as she clings to and helps drown a cloth mask in unison. They both obviously thought that since they were together, the deep end wouldn't be so scary, that they are both in modest but still appropriate two-piece tankinis that make the wearer look like they are wearing a one-piece bathing suit when secretly they are actually wearing two pieces. The scandal of it all. They match and even coordinate with the half-face respirator's Speedo, but looking the part and actually being the part are different things, so they flail as drowning people tend to do. A pair of bandanas talks politics from the edge of the pool because they know that it's what the lifeguard is doing too. One floating as if he was drowning, trying to get the attention of the lifeguard, still busy with other non-life-saving duties. They are also wearing Speedos, but not for drag in the water. They are wearing them to show off the tankinis to the point of ridiculousness to the swimming in general. And a face shield is off on the shallow end, claiming that he's about to drown with the inability to stand up, wearing one of those floaty belts you see in aquafit classes and kiddie pools. Who let these people swim, says the half-face respirator. They can barely float, or don't care. He's troubled by the arbitrariness of it all. Where is the lifeguard? He's still on his phone, talking with his boss, looking very busy. Not his real boss, but the one who actually pays for things. Not a head lifeguard, but a rec center biggest donor. They want a return on the investments he's made on the pool and is very happy that so many people are in the water under the careful watch of the lifeguard. Subtle unease and even anger you feel towards governments arbitrarily dropping any mandates. A feeling you have because of poll numbers, popular discourse, truck convoys, or science that can't be scrutinized by scientists is called conscience. And what we are learning as a society is that conscience can only be kept underwater for so long. They float to the top like a cork, and you can save people from drowning in falsehoods if you let them. You are right in thinking that dropping these mandates is arbitrary because picking them up was just as arbitrary. There was no scrutiny to them. There was no authority behind them, blind authority. Almost no one in Alberta would have been able to tell you who their provincial health minister or chief medical officer was before the pandemic, unless they worked with these people. An individual may have been aware of their position, but never knew their name or political leanings or current policy for the kinds of mandates that would be enacted upon them or the public's behalf. So you know who is a cop by their badge and uniform, their cars and their flashing lights. Their authority shows up in very clear and unarbitrary ways when challenged or needed. The same thing goes for firemen or lifeguards or masters in their realm of authority. But health ministers had to be lofted to their positions to mandate healthy living, a task they did sweet nothing about for over the last few decades as obesity rates skyrocketed and smoking got a new higher-tech version of nicotine to pander to young people in vaping. The public knew about health professionals and ignored them all the same because fast food is well marketed and Big Macs beat carrot sticks any day of the week in public discourse. But then, when the threat seemed real enough, medical professionals were given the kind of authority that only those who contend with real threats usually have. They were given the authority to mandate actions that they could never have persuaded people to do in the first place, which is why their mandates failed. Like a lifeguard who can walk around a pool and sit in a chair and watch children play in the shallow end, 90% of their job can be done by an amateur. But that 10% requires a trained professional. It can't. Medical professionals are not lawmakers, not people who deal with freedoms and restrictions, not voted in or able to be voted out. They were just as out of place as the dealing lifeguard who let everyone into the deep end. A cop persuaded you to follow the law by threat of enforcement and deadly force. A firefighter persuades you of his ability to fight the fire in a Nomex suit in a truck that can pump water at 2,000 liters per minute. But a chief medical officer with no clout and a representational parliamentary elected premier behind them exercises no real authority. This is the societal equivalent of someone saying their dad could beat your dad up, which only works until you find out their dad is a wimp and remembers yours is a trucker. And then all that time you spent listening to their false authority and arbitrary power seems like theft, and it was in the first place. Therefore, one must be in subjugation not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. Romans 13:5. It is abomination for kings to do evil, for the throne is established by righteousness. Proverbs 16:12, English Standard Version. If you want to feel good about dropping these mandates, then you need to find the kind of righteousness that you would never trespass a charter right to keep someone safe out of principle. The kind of lifeguard that would never let someone convince them that they could swim for persuasion alone. They would want to see some kind of skill before letting them into the deep end. They'd want to know something works before everyone should have to do it. But if you feel bad because you can see the double standards now, you can see the authority not being used correctly. You can see that persuasion of good intentions wasn't just absent, but never an option. There is no end to that feeling until the people causing them are arbitrarily removed from power. And that is a sinking feeling, if I ever had one, because power is never relinquished arbitrarily.